Hi, everybody, and welcome back. My name is Deborah Peters, and this is the Deborah Peters Show, where we talk about consciousness in your health, in your wealth, in your business, yes, in your business, and in your relationships and your self-expression. Because if you're not able to be you, nothing flows. And I have an amazing guest today. I've been absolutely very much looking forward to today's episode because it's all about money. And money's a lot of things to a lot of people. So I'm not going to give that away. I'm going to wait and I'm going to invite in my guest, Jen Paterson from Canada. So a fellow Canucker here. Welcome to the Deborah Peters Show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, just like, money's been this thing in my life that I really had to learn how to have some kind of healthy dynamic with, because I grew up, and maybe we can get into this because it really comes down to how you're programmed and conditioned about money. And, I grew up in a home where money was like a secret. Like you didn't talk about it. People got really upset and angry and defensive when you talked about money. Like it was this bad thing that was always out of reach and was just like way out there. And if you actually got your hands on it, you better never let it go. Now, in defense of my parents and my grandparents, they came out of a couple wars. So, things were pretty scarce for a while. And actually, my mom's favorite saying was, we didn't have two nickels to rub together and there was no way of getting more money. And I'm just like, oh my God. I was like traumatized. So what got you into helping people, especially entrepreneurs and mompreneurs, deal with money?
Honestly, I have always loved money, finance, numbers. I mean, I was usually the only girl in the room in my economics classes in university. I loved all things numbers and money. To me, it was simple. It was always, to me, I always saw it as simple. 1 + 1 always made 2, and that for me felt comfortable. My very type A personality felt comfortable with that and in that world. And as I grew and developed, I had a lot of entrepreneurs in my circle, I guess, so to speak, like in my kind of aura around me. And I kept seeing the same trend over and over and over and over again. Entrepreneur, just so amazing at their given practice. And like, I'm literally talking every end of the spectrum here. Healthcare professionals, dance studio owners, home stagers, plumbers, lawyers, like the run of the gamut. And over and over again, they would be amazing at their craft, their chosen trade, but their businesses would not be as successful financially as you would think they should be. And
Because it doesn't matter what you do. It's
no,
not about doing, it's about inside here,
yeah, like,
right? The perception of money.
well, and not only that, but I remember speaking with a lawyer one day, and she said, I went to law school for 3 years or however long law school is. And she said, I came out of law school and I knew how to be a lawyer, and I knew how to write a brief, and I knew how to argue a case, but I did not know how to be a business owner. I did not know how to run my business. She said, I didn't.
Physicians are the same.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And every single person I have talked to in any trade has said the exact same words to me, almost verbatim.
Yes.
Insert their chosen trade here, but I came out of blank school knowing how to be a blank. I did not know how to run a business.
Okay, I want to jump in on that, because what's the deal with not teaching our kids about money? Like, I know for me, it was it was just because it was such a hot topic, because there was so much negative emotion from being struggling and being in poverty. You know, it's just like nobody really wanted to talk about that because it was painful, because it came out of some really seriously painful experiences. But I mean, aren't we past that? Why aren't we educating our kids?
That is, it is what it comes down to, and there is so much baggage when it comes to money and
Yeah.
finance because it touches everything.
Yeah.
The computers that we're having this conversation on, anybody watching the screen you're watching it on, money has touched that. The internet connection you're
Mm.
using to view this video was paid for with money. It literally touches everything in our lives. It is our source of survival in society today.
Boom.
You
That's it.
cannot get by without having any money at all. Like that just doesn't happen. Can't work. You have to have at least some money to
You
just
can't live.
basically survive, to have a roof over your head and food in
Yeah.
your belly. You have to have money. Like there is nothing in our existence that money doesn't touch. So it is directly linked to that survival, that fight or flight reflex. And so
Yeah.
there's all this emotional baggage that comes along with it. Plus our upbringing, you know, we're talking about your childhood, that gets lumped on there, and that all that baggage gets lumped on there. And suddenly
Yeah.
it's not like we're carrying a couple of bags. I mean, we're carrying like a tanker truck with us full
That you
of
have to
baggage.
like find a way to wade through to get to um I was going to say the truth about money, but that's a perception. That you have to like wade through to get to some sense of perceiving money as what it is, which we're going to
Yeah.
get into. And so, you know, but I digress for a second because you said a lot there. And, you know, the thing I want to point out that you said that's most profound is the emotional, is like a stigma, like there's a program running. What about loving money? You know, when you hear people say, you
Hmm.
know, it's evil and you're a
It's the
crook if you
societal
have a
pressures.
lot.
Yeah.
Sorry?
So I say it's the societal pressures.
Yeah.
Our society, you see it everywhere, that money is directly linked with greed and excess. And, you know, I think about most recently, like the Met Gala and all
Yes.
of the excess that is on parade. And there's the one sort of group that's like, oh, I want that, I want that, I want that. And then there's the other group that's like, oh, that's awful, that's horrible. And neither one is a terribly healthy attitude. If
Yeah,
you
I
ask
mean,
me.
they're, like, diabolically opposed practically.
Exactly. And so there's all of this societal messaging and pressure of money is bad, money is the root of all evil. And you think about anywhere else you see money in the media, you think of like the evil villain who's the billionaire evil villain,
It's always a bad
right? Like,
person, you
and it's
know?
all of these subliminal messages that we're fed constantly that money is a bad thing. And then if you love it, that there's something wrong with you, that
Yeah, and you
you are
should
headed
share it with
towards,
others that have
you
less.
know, sociopathic tendencies here, and you're headed towards like, you know, supervillain. And that's not necessarily the case. Just because you like money doesn't make you a bad person, but somehow in our society they have become linked.
Well, you know, I have an opinion on that. So I feel that this is my observation that there's a societal program. How it got there, that's another conversation. But there is a societal program that says that life is hard, you got to struggle, the odds are stacked against you, and you should feel bad about that and be a victim because then if you do, someone should come along. We know what happens when you should all over the place. Someone should come along and save you from your plight because you poor thing, you cannot possibly work your way out of this horrible situation that you're in. You're doomed to be there. It's like a caste system. And it's a lie. It's a lie. And we're going to get into money mindset and execution and what was the word that you used? Uh, interdependency interdependency of the mindset and the actual utilization and handling of money. But before we get there, I think we have to acknowledge that, first of all, that's not true. Everyone is created equal on a spiritual level. We're all equal. Some may have more resources than others. Even if you're born with a silver spoon in your mouth, you can lose it, you can destroy it. Um, but the point of the matter is that I really want to get into today is that the creation of money is comes from within. You know, I've recently really started utilizing scripture as a way to make sense of my own personal growth. And there's always been this saying that has come through my mind, you know, God is my supply, not humans, not man. And I never really understood it until I started seriously developing, because my background's in neuroscience. So years ago, when I seriously started developing patterns of thinking, feeling, emoting, and relating to money, where I want you to pick this up is the relationship to money. When I started developing those patterns, rather than fighting against my patterning of my childhood, when I started creating these new patterns of thinking, emoting, feeling, and relating, my money story changed completely.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely there's a lot of stuff that comes from within, and I think a lot of times it can become that self-fulfilling prophecy
Sure.
of, whatever you tell yourself is what's going to come to pass. If you are the person that says, "I'm always broke, life is hard, blah 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 blah," and you're
Life sucks and then I
constantly
die.
telling yourself that, and you're constantly being fed those messages from outside and within, then guess what? Life's going to be hard and you're always going to be broke. And I think that it can be really hard to break that cycle. And
Yeah.
I think that, you know, one of the things that really drives me a little bit insane when it comes to this industry, talking about finances and money, is the idea that you can just change your thoughts and then the world is going to magically change around you. And I think that that's part of the story,
Yeah.
but I don't think it's the whole story. So if you just sat on your bed and thought nice thoughts about money all day long, you're not just going to have someone with a money truck drive up to your driveway and say, "Here you go."
I know.
It's just not how it works. But at the same time, if you're trying to implement things, but you're always saying, "Oh, I'm going to fail, I'm going to fail, I'm going to fail. This isn't going to happen. I don't know why I'm even bothering," then you're also not going to have success. So,
Well,
like you
what did
said,
Henry
that
Ford say?
interdependence.
If you think you can't, you're
Whether
right.
or not you think you can or you can't, you're right.
Yeah,
And I'm not a huge fan of Mr. Ford for
I
various
know.
other reasons,
But
but
that
I
was a good
do I
quote.
do like that quote. And I think that also, one of the other things that tends to stack against particularly women and people of color is the fact that they're not given the assumption of success.
Well, again, it comes back to that societal program,
Yeah.
you know?
It's not the assumption that they'll be successful. The assumption
Right.
is that they're going to struggle and it's going to be hard and it's going to be an uphill battle the whole way there.
You
And
know,
I think that
let me just jump in there because let's talk about women first for a moment. I've done some programs for NASDAQ, and the program I wrote for them, I entitled it "Women Are an Emerging Market." And I recently wrote an article on LinkedIn based on that. Um, the premise of the article is that nobody's, you know, nobody's that's sitting at the boardroom table is gonna like move their chair over, scooch over, and go, "Why don't you just pull a seat in right here?" And that's true whether, you want to believe it or not, because I've been coaching male CEOs for over 20 years. And often when I run programs, I'm the only woman in the room, which is tragic because where are all the women? And so, you have to stop asking for permission. But the real the real point of the article is that as a woman, you don't have to see yourself that way anymore. And when you stop seeing yourself that way, the environment around you will stop reflecting that back to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's where the
And
change comes in, right?
yeah, and I think that, a lot of it does have to start within. It does have to start with your own belief and the way you see yourself, and then you have to be the person, and then the rest of it will fall into place. So
Yes.
you do have to embody and become the person who has the life that you are shooting for.
Yes.
You
Yeah,
know,
which, that's true about anything. I was speaking at a conference. It was a title company flew me into San Francisco a few years ago, and I did the keynote. And at the end, this hand popped up, this lady, and she asked me this it's very heartfelt question. She said, "Well, based on everything you've said today, how am I going to use that to find a relationship? I want to get married, and I'd like to find a life partner." And my response back to her was, be the person. Be the person that you want to attract. And that's what you're saying. When you see yourself wealthy, when you see yourself um, successful, that's one step. And so as then that emanates out, because that's how you see yourself and that's how you feel about yourself, and then the opportunities to reflect that and match that start to show up in your life, then what? I think that's where you need to get into some meat here.
some action. And so,
Yes.
like, that was what you said, right at the top of the show, was where the strategy and the mindset really do need to work interdependently. And I'm very particular
Mhm.
about that word, being interdependence, because that means that you can't have one without the other. And I always sort of liken it to my relationship with my partner. So, we've been together for almost 20 years now, and we have developed an interdependence because there are certain things that, you know, I know that he is going to take the ball and run with, and he knows that there's certain things that I'm going to
Mhm.
take the ball and I'm going to run with. But both of us would be perfectly fine on our own, but we're stronger together.
Sure.
And it's the same thing with your finances. Yes, strategy can get you so far on its own, mindset can get you so far on its own, but they're stronger together and they work together to get you further than either one is going to do by itself.
Right.
And so you've got the mindset, you're embodying who that person is, that successful CEO or successful business owner or,
Entrepreneur.
entrepreneur, whatever. And then you start to notice the opportunities that were probably always there to begin with, but
Yes.
because your brain wasn't in the right place and your mind wasn't in the right place, you weren't seeing them. But now you start to see them, but you have to take action on them, and you have to take big action on them, and not being afraid to fail, because failing is also a key part of this whole equation. You got to do something wrong before you can do it right.
To understand the contrast, because I think there's great value in contrast if you don't stay in the contrast too long, and that's really the key here. So that's the pivot. There's when you know what you don't like, or when you know what you don't want, or when you have results that you aren't happy about, then there is the flip side of the coin of, well, what is it I do want? What is it I do like? What are the results I feel good about? And so the key is to use that contrast as a bouncing off point, but not to wallow in it. And
I
that's
think
the
a great
key.
example of that, and this is something that I'm sure we've all have seen either on TV or in our own lives, is watching a kid learn to walk.
Yes,
And, you see the kid, they get up, maybe they
I
try and
know,
take a
right?
step forward and they fall on their face. And we always say, oh, you fell down, pick yourself back up, off you go and try again. Because we all know deep in our bodies and our souls and our bones that this kid is eventually going to walk.
That's right.
So we don't have to beat ourselves up over every time they fall on their little bums. But as we age, somehow we forget about that learning curve. And we forget about how critical piece failure is in the learning process. And if we're not perfect at something the very first time we try it, it's like, oh, I'm done. See you later.
Yeah.
This isn't for me. Whereas, like when we're watching these kids learn these basic life skills that we know success is going to come eventually, then we're like, oh, you fell down, no big deal. Oh, you fell down, no big deal. Like they can fall down 30 times and every time we're
That's
picking
right.
back up and say, you can do it again. And it's got to be the same way as an adult when you're talking about striving for these successes, whether you're talking about investing or growing a business or, trying to climb the corporate ladder. Even if you fall down 30 times, you learn something every time and you pick yourself up and you keep trying and you keep going for it and you keep shooting for that thing and knowing deep in your bones that success is inevitable. It's just going to take some time. And again, that's
Yeah,
where that interdependence comes right back in. It's knowing deep in your soul, deep in your bones, that I'm going to get to success. It's going to happen.
absolutely.
And these
It's
are
a
the actions I need to
knowingness.
take to get there.
My favorite saying is, there is no failure, only feedback. So if you think you failed, I think you're sunk. But if you look at it and go, okay, that was just a missed attempt. What's the feedback from this where I can make adjustments and recalibrate to my desired outcome instead of perhaps being calibrated to the fear or the doubt or the limiting belief that you can't do something. I don't know. It's just, I feel like in business, in success, in money, it's like 80% mindset and then 20% taking action. And so if you can spend some time in the morning before you hit the ground running and do a little meditation and set your intention for the day, 15 minutes, not asking for an hour, 15 minutes, and then boom, go get them. Because from that place, you're connected, your head, your heart, your feet, it's all connected, right? I know you have a program because I'd like to get into some actual tangible
Yeah.
actions. And I know you have a program called Tiny Habits. Is that correct?
Yeah, so it's not it's not my program. I cannot take claim to the Tiny Habits program. It is developed by I believe he's a psychologist. His name is Dr. BJ Fogg.
Okay.
And I don't use this phrase lightly, but reading his book was truly life-changing for me.
Nice.
And I really do mean that, like, in the greatest sense of the word. Like, it has changed my entire existence. It's also changed the way that I sort of strategize my life and my day in order to get more accomplished and to be able to not only get more accomplished, but also be more present and not feel super guilty about spending time with my kids or putting my feet up at the end of the day or, taking time for myself. Like it is really sort of transformed the way I live my life. And so what the strategy is creating these little micro habits that propel you into an action sequence.
Nice.
So, for example, one of the things that I tried to do for years, and I really do mean years, was start my day with exercise. And it just
Yeah.
never happened. I always felt like, oh, I'm not a morning person. It's just not going to happen. And then what I do now is my tiny habit is getting up in the morning. I put my feet on the floor and I immediately take off my jammies and throw on my running shoes. And if that is all I do, then I consider it a huge win and I carry on with my day.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, once the workout gear is on and my shoes are on, it's like, oh, I might as well just do the workout because I'm already
Exactly.
into the motion. I'm already starting the routine. And then the subconscious mind takes over and you just go through the motions. It's sort of like tying your shoes. You probably tie your shoes the exact same way every single time you put your shoes on. But you don't think about it. You don't think, okay, right over left, it just happens. And it's the same thing with most other habits. It's just finding that trigger point. Like, what is that very first thing you do to start a ritual
Yeah.
that's going to propel you forward. And so for me, working out in the morning, it's literally putting my shoes on. And I can honestly tell you, with the
Mm.
exception of a couple of days last week when I was nursing an injury, I have worked out every single day for the past 8 weeks.
Good for you.
Like, and it's been hugely life-changing. And so for somebody, especially like busy moms or entrepreneurs where their life is chaotic and unpredictable, and one day to the next is never the same and really difficult
Sure.
to establish some of these routines, this has really sort of changed the game for me.
Yeah, and so in terms of mothering children, what I found, because I'm a mom, what I found is that having my routines set an example for my child to create a routine that worked from a very, very early age. And to your point, because I used to own a gym, um, doing my workouts, they're like a major part of my life. Like you could never stop me from working out. I think I'll be like ready to check out off the planet and I'll be in the weight room pumping some iron. But that would be funny. Yeah, so having her see me create these little habits or routines for myself that fostered goodness in me, um, actually, it's become a lifestyle for her as well, and, it just goes on and on from there. So good on you, because whatever it is you're doing, I mean, look at the glow on your face. It's working because you're not just, there's so much to that. Like you're honoring yourself, you're giving to yourself, you're encouraging yourself, you're creating results for yourself. And then there's all the chemicals in your body, the endorphins and feeling more fit and strong. And, that kind of an example for your family is like super powerful because there's so many people that don't. So good on you. Um, so tiny habits. I remember when we did the pre-interview, you had some tiny habits for a dollar. Can you talk about that?
I think I remember what you're
Yeah, yeah.
referencing.
So we're talking about, what's a dollar? Like when you have a dollar in front of you, like check this out. I actually got a $2 bill the other day, and I'm like, I
I didn't
haven't
even know
had
this
one of
was
these in
still a thing.
ages. Yeah. I don't even know how old this thing is, but I'm hanging on to it. So I think you were talking about taking this, if this was a dollar, taking this dollar and how does making this dollar work for you? Like splitting the pie.
Ah, yes. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's not necessarily a tiny habit. That's more of a sort of a strategy thing. But one of the things I really want to quickly touch on while we're still talking about habits is how to use that sort of tiny habit process to really create not only quality healthy rituals, but also quality financial rituals.
Got
So
it.
one of the things that I am a big proponent of in my business, in my life, everywhere is having a weekly, what I call your money power hour. And
Nice.
this is something that I think you should be doing, whether you are an employee, whether you are a business owner, regardless, because money touches everything in your life. You got to pay attention to it. So
Yeah.
you've got to have your power hour and have your tiny habit that sets you up for your power hour. So
Okay.
whatever it is that is your trigger point that says, okay, this is now the time that I'm going to sit down and pay attention to my money. So for me, my power hour is while my son is in preschool. And so my trigger point is actually very easy. I
Yeah.
drop him off. I go and sit down in the little cafe that's right around the corner. I have my laptop. I flip it open. I plug my headphones in, put on my favorite Spotify playlist, and I just dive in. And the rest of it just happens. I pay my bills. I make sure that I pay myself. All of that stuff happens very, very naturally. And it happens every single week without fail.
Yeah.
So, figuring out for you where is your trigger point that's going to get you started on your routine of paying your bills, checking in on your money, looking at your investments, maybe strategizing for what you want to accomplish, looking at your goals, all of that stuff. It needs to be checked in on regularly. And I'm sure we'll touch on this a little bit later
Sure.
of you have to pay attention to it because what you focus on grows. So
Always.
if you put your head in the sand and go la 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 la, your money's not going to be there to support you.
That's awesome. Can
It's
you do
really
that
not.
again? That's awesome. I
So,
love it.
that is sort of the way that I think a lot of people, they look at it at a monthly basis or a quarterly basis, and that is a long time
It
to
is.
go between checking in on your money.
I know.
And, you do need to check on it a little bit more frequently than that.
Or they
Oh,
wait till the end of the year at tax time and then they're
oh my
like,
gosh,
"Oh
yes.
my God."
And the usually those people, they're the ones who are saying, I made some money. What the F happened to it?
Yeah. Where'd it go?
Where did it all go? I know I made money. It's here on this paper that my accountant gave me, but what happened to it all? So those are those people. So don't be those person. Don't be those people. See your money, see it working for you. And on that same line, the dollar. So I
Yeah.
always like to think of it. I'm Canadian. We see the loonie. And so for me, it works beautifully because you want to think of the loonie like a piece of pie. And you have to think of it, especially as a business owner or an entrepreneur, how is this $1 going to support me? And how am I going to split this dollar up to best support my life and my business and my lifestyle, et cetera, et
Yeah.
cetera. So a lot of people will think budgeting is really, really hard. And they're like, oh, it's got to be this complicated thing. And it's like, not really. Break it down to a single dollar. And how would you split up that $1 in terms of what you need and what your business needs or what your life needs? So, maybe for a lot of entrepreneurs, you'd take 20 to 30 cents of that dollar, and that would be the money you put aside for taxes. Maybe you take a penny to 5 cents and you put that aside, and that is your profits. Maybe you take, 25 to 35 cents, and that is your owner's pay. And, 40 to 50 cents. I haven't kept a running total in
I
my
know,
head. We
right?
might be over $1 here, but maybe the rest of your dollar is then your operating expenses or, your lifestyle expenses or whatever. And
And
you
I
can
think
literally do this process no matter what it is you're trying to run.
right. And I think you had, if I remember, you had like 2% for taxes,
Way more than
10%
that.
for self. Way more than that. I
Way more
know.
than 2% for taxes. Let me tell
That
you.
was 1999. It was 2% for taxes. 2022. Okay.
Yeah, now we're
50% for taxes.
there you go.
I know. Unbelievable. So yeah, so it's taxes, pay yourself, profits, investments,
Growth
whatever.
opportunities, and every single person's dollar and every business's dollar is going to be divided differently.
Sure.
But I find that if you look at it, when you break it down to that very basic level, suddenly even people who were like, I don't do money, I don't do numbers, this is too much,
I know.
can get their head wrapped around it because it is something that we all understand. We all understand a dollar and how much that is. And we all understand how you can break it down. And then all that does is it translates into percentages. So
Yes.
when you get money in the door, it's like, okay, well, what is the percentage of this money that needs to go to paying myself? What is the percentage of this money that I need to put aside for taxes? What percentage of this money is earmarked for operating expenses or growth opportunities or payroll or whatever?
Yeah. So it's interesting. I want to segue into women, but before I do, I have this one client. It's a construction company and family-owned business. Son took over from his dad, and basically, when he took over from his dad, he kept going with all of his dad's perceptions of reality around, never spending a dollar, not coloring outside the lines. We can only be this big, and it was really a lot of resistance and struggle that it was creating for him, which didn't fit well at all. And so, I said to him one day, it's like, if you invest a little money, I know it might feel like crazy to spend this money on this thing, whatever it was. I think it was software or something. And you look at the ROI on it, it might just be the best investment you've ever made, and it'll make you more money in the long run. And he had a really hard time doing it because he was so programmed. But he came back around like 6 months later, and he's like, You know, the biggest thing you've taught me is to let go and stop white knuckling the money and you know, invest. And it's like we've grown the company phenomenally. So there's a lot to be said about white knuckling your money and coming at it with this poverty consciousness, which is a great segue into women. What is up with women not taking charge of wealth building? Girls, ladies, seriously, be fiscally savvy and be financially sound. And it's not going to take anything. It's not going to be a slight against your man. It's not going to take anything away. But I actually know women, I'm not going to mention any names. This is 2022. And I actually know women who don't even have their own bank account. Everything's in the husband's name. I think it's by design, but that's another conversation. Everything's in the husband's name, and you know they're running around town with a bunch of kids and one Amex card, and he pays once a month, and everything is like super monitored. What is going on, women, ladies? Hello. I don't care if you work outside the home or not. Manage your own money. How about
Yeah.
that? Can I say one more thing? How
Yeah.
about that? How about when we're breaking down this dollar, let's say you're in a one income family, your husband brings in the mother load, and you're the one that's making everything click and work and kids and home and propping him up and all of that. What if with this dollar, every dollar he brings in, there's a percentage that goes into his wife's bank account? That's not happening.
Not for most people.
Just like so archaic.
Well, here's the thing. So I think that there's a lot of different factors at play here. I think there is, again, the societal pressures. So women, it wasn't until the 1970s that women could have a bank account or a credit card without their husband or their father signing for them.
God.
And let's be honest, that's not that long ago. Like it is very
Seems like
recent history
eons.
that
Yeah.
women could have financial autonomy. Like that is a very new concept in terms of, you think about the history of money, like that goes back a heck of a lot longer.
Sure.
So it is a fairly new concept for females to have financial autonomy. So that's the first factor in there. And so a lot of women, particularly ones who were raised in we don't talk about money, your husband is, the breadwinner, they are in charge of the money, raised in those types of households, it may not even have occurred to them that this is important and that this is something that you really should be paying attention to. And I'm not a big believer that it, always has to be one way or another. I think that,
Sure.
finances within households and things can work very, very differently. And it's whatever works for your particular, setup. But at the same time,
That's
you
funny.
gotta pay attention at least a little bit, because you never know what's coming down the pipeline. And like I said again at the beginning of the show, money touches everything. Money is a part of our everyday lives. And so you've got to have at least a basic knowledge if, the sky were to fall and suddenly you find yourself on your own.
Yeah, I mean, I can attest to that because my dad died when I was 7, and my mom, I mean, it's not that she didn't know money. She came out of banking when they got married, and they had a farm together, but that was in a time where that farm was his farm and she was, the wife, right? So then when he passed, and found out we were bankrupt and they were like right on the edge of coming and foreclosing on the farmland. Fortunately, coming out of banking, she'd handled money, but as an employee, not as an independent human being. So that's a completely different thinking system. And she had to get on top of it real fast. I mean, like, what are you gonna
Come
do?
here.
I know. Hello.
Figure it out.
Start negotiating with the financiers and like pull it together. But that's the and maybe that sounds like a worst case scenario that will never happen to me, but I know a lot of women that have ended up divorced with nothing, or they've ended up with a dead husband and then they've got this estate that gets taken over. I mean, anything anything
Anything can
can
happen.
happen.
I mean, I've even heard of, like, partners who are still together, and one partner, and it's not always the males. Like, let's not be
Sure.
too
We're
gender
not male
specific here,
bashing.
but one partner has poorly mismanaged the money, and the IRS, or even
Sure.
worse, some government officials come knocking on the door and say, "Hey, look," and the other partner is completely, you know, unaware of either the very poor money management, or, borderline illegal activities, and
Yeah.
suddenly they're saddled with
Oh
this
my
issue.
God.
And it sounds like, a horror story thing, but it happens more than you think.
It does. Happens a
Um,
lot. It's not a
it
one-off.
it's not a one-off. And I spent about 5 years as a financial advisor prior to switching into, financial coaching. And I came across more than once in that very short tenure as a financial advisor. I came across quite a few women who were widowed, divorced, you know, insert reason for splitting up a marriage here, and who had always said, and it was always the same sentence: I never had to pay attention to the money until this happened.
Yeah.
And now I don't know what to do. And I remember, even in some cases, we were talking about this before we got on the air, where literally people didn't know how to pay, like, their utility bills or their mortgage or
That's
their rent.
insane.
And so I would have to walk them through, how to set up a bill pay through their online banking, which you would think is basic knowledge, but unless you've never had to do it, you may not know how, and you may not know what to
Yeah.
look at. And it can be, just a lot of very scary numbers if you don't know what you're looking at.
Yeah. Yeah,
And so
exactly.
you really, regardless of how your life is set up, pay attention is really something that you need to do at least a little bit. Like, at least pay attention a little bit, so that you've got a general idea of how things are structured, of what's going on, where things are, how to find them, and what to do in case of emergency.
Yeah, of course. And so it really comes down to like when you say a pay attention, that's a really good phrase because it's paying attention to anything grows and expands that thing, even the bad stuff in your life. I put this post on Facebook the other day. When you complain about anything, you contribute to the problem. So, what positive focus are you giving your wealth? And that is the beginning of a positive relationship with money, right? So it is about having a relationship with money. A few years ago, I created this online program that we're getting ready to have as a virtual program online. And I called it Shift, Change, and Heal Your Money Story, because behind success, wealth, and poverty is a story. We all have a story, and a money story comes from the programming we receive from our environment between the ages of 0 to 7. So, if our environment is very much about struggle, being impoverished, money's hard to come by. What fascinated me as a kid riding the school bus for an hour each way was when we would roll into another farmyard to pick up the kids, and I would see farmers that seemingly had the same kind of farming operation business that we had, living completely different lives. For instance, I was always jealous of my neighbor because he had the latest mini bike or the latest snowmobile or the latest whatever he had. And I didn't have those things. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. You live 4 miles from me we have more land and more cows than you do. That's our cash crop. How come I'm not enjoying this kind of life? And it's what set me on this whole journey of doing what I do. So when you've worked with people, and then we have to say saranara to people because we're running over time, but on a closing thought, what would you like to leave our viewers with around shifting your money story? Because I think that's where it starts, right?
Absolutely. And I think that, like I said, the way we're raised is
Yeah.
going to be a part of your money story, whether you like it or not. And you're, first of all, you have to make peace with that. So that's
Boom.
the first thing. And any money transformation is always going to start from within.
Mm-hmm.
It's always going to start with you. Your money story is not going to transform. And anyone who says, oh, well, I'll just win the lottery, I'm going to tell you that if you don't start from within and change your money story, doesn't matter how much money's coming in the door, you'll find a way to spend it and you'll find a way to lose it.
It's true.
That is the honest to God guaranteed truth. So you've got to start from within. You've got to start figuring out not necessarily like the why. You don't have to, go too deep and, spend days and years in therapy, but get a sense of like, what are your motivations behind doing things? What drives you to make spending decisions? Do you even make spending decisions, or are you reactionary in your spending? Are you reactionary in your any financial decision making? And start within, figure out what is your own money story? What is your habits? What are they sending you toward? And then, start looking around. Look around you and see what other options are out there when it comes to figuring out your finances. Because,
Mm.
I do have a strategy that I recommend, but I'm going to say, like, it's not going to be for everybody. There
Sure.
are other strategies out there that will work for other people because they're just wired differently. And that's
Yeah.
totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Find something that works for you and implement a strategy and do your best to just keep trying. And it's not going to work the first time, and you're going to make mistakes, and it's not going to be beautiful sunshine, roses, and bunnies every single day. But it's all about finding that progress. It's not about finding perfection. Perfection
Right.
with finances doesn't exist. So stop trying to shoot for it. And pay attention, start from within, and
Keep going.
always keep going. And remember that your mind and your strategy have to work together.
Yes,
They both have to be there.
they
So
do.
that is what I want you to walk away with
Oh
is.
my God, that is so good. We could go
And
on all
also,
day.
there's one other thing that I want to say.
Okay.
Anybody can be good with money. I don't
Yes.
care what's going on upstairs. Anybody can be good with money.
It's so true. It's so true. So, key takeaway, you're brilliant, by the way. Thank you for
Oh, thank
being
you.
here. And I know you've got kids that you've like sent off to the corner with toys and told them to be
I'm
quiet. So
hearing noises upstairs, and I'm in the back of my head going, what on earth are those two
I don't
getting
know what's
into?
going on up there. But here's the deal, right? When they're noisy, it's good. When they're quiet, that's
That's what.
when things are going
Well,
down.
with my youngest, my older one, she's not so much like that. She's quiet. Generally, she's got a book and is hiding in a corner. But my youngest, oh man, if it's quiet,
Look
he's
out.
doing something nefarious.
That's hilarious. So the takeaway is make peace with your money story and then write a new one and then chunk that new money story down into tangible objectives and goals and then pay attention and get on once a week to your weekly money power hour. I made great notes and and get in there and love on your money because whatever you love on expands, right?
And if you don't love your money, it's not going to love you back.
Right. It's kind of like your dog.
Yeah,
Oh my God.
you got to show it
You
some love.
gotta just give me the love. Come on, give me some sugar. Okay, here we go. So thank you so much, Jen. I love you. You're amazing. Great job today. And you're getting hearts and lots of comments from people. So this is fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
So I know people are going to want to talk to you. How do they do that?
Absolutely. So you can reach out to me via my website, dollardivas.org. That is where you can find information about me and all my coaching programs. You can also pop me an email. I answer everybody who sends me an email. So it's just jen@dollardivas.org. So just hop on into my inbox. And you can also find me on Instagram at jenpaterson.biz.
And she's on LinkedIn too, you guys. I made her connect with me today.
I'm technically there, but I will say if you reach out on LinkedIn, there is a very good chance I'll get back to you sometime in 2025.
Crickets, right?
Just
Nothing's
FYI.
happening over there. You're funny. You're funny. Okay, guys, love you. Mwah. Thank you for being here today. Thank you, Jen. I'll let you go take care of your kids. So don't tear your house apart. And remember, everybody, stay awake, stay aligned, and stay sovereign.